Welcome to the Tradar a Traitors podcast. I'm Matthew, a writer working in unscripted TV development, and this podcast is usually dedicated to covering different countries' versions of The Traitors. However, while we are waiting for the next season of The Traitors, which is coming very soon, we've recently covered Netflix's Million Dollar Secret and are now covering the UK version of Genius Game on ITV, hosted by David Tennant. To help me recap the episodes and analyse the gameplay, or lack thereof, is reality TV guru and regular co-host David Bloomberg. David, welcome back.
Thank you. Thank you. Hello. Yes. For anyone who doesn't know me and you're just popping in on Genius Game episode 7 for some reason, maybe because it's sort of the best episode so far. Spoiler alert.
Yeah.
But I've been covering reality TV for 25 years, everywhere that you can think of, and we'll talk about it with anyone that you can think of pretty much anywhere.
Yeah. I don't have any. Normally, we've got some sort of catch-up points on the previous episode. I don't have much. I don't know if there's anything, David, you wanted to mention about episode 6 before we go ahead.
Nothing comes to mind.
Yeah, I mean, as always, there are lots of comments on particularly the YouTube videos. So anyone who's desperate to discuss it with people, head to YouTube, look at the comments. You will get into some great discussions there. I do have one thing for the listeners, though. So I have a single item for our little TT News segment. After quite the wait, the BBC here in the UK are finally going to be airing the Traitors New Zealand Series 2. The show will begin on Monday, the 16th of June on BBC Three, and the whole season will also be available instantly, presumably. This is what they always tend to do on BBC iPlayer the same day. I'll post some reminders about this on the Trader social media near the time, which means you need to follow the social media. And this is particularly good news for Trader listeners in the UK because, as well as watching this new version of the show, we've already covered the entire season on the podcast. So you have a whole bunch of episodes to keep you company and some fantastic interviews with key players from that cast. My personal opinion is that Traitors New Zealand Season 2 was genuinely up there with one of the really great Traitors seasons that I've watched, probably in my top 5. So I cannot recommend the show and our podcast episodes enough.
Yes. Yes, I wholeheartedly agree.
So, David, episode 7, you've already said you thought it was the best episode of the season. I probably agree with that. I've had at least one message saying this much the same thing. So,
Yeah, I
lead us into it. Take us away.
All right. Well, we get a quick recap of Ken's strategy backfiring and Bex accidentally being the solo winner and causing Allison to lose to Ben in the death match. So much, let me just preface this. Much like last week, I said I put out a warning specifically to Bex, like if you're listening, stop now. Same applies to Bodalia this week. Speaking of whom, the most honest player and the gamiest player enter first, which would be Bodalia and Ben. Ben feels calmer and more confident and hopes he may have scared some people a bit. Bodalia claims he's there to win and anything goes, and I'm willing to do whatever it takes to win. And for those of you not watching the video, those were all in quotes because nobody believes that. Come on. All right. Yeah, he's there to win and anything go. No, no.
I mean, he does try to do something that he's never done before, but
Yeah.
I've got strange feelings about Battalion in this episode that I'll get to by the time the main match really starts. But
Yeah.
um, I'm just confused by Bedelia. This whole season he's like, I'm going to be honest. I'm going to I'm going to play this
hmm
game really fair. And suddenly now he's like, hey, maybe I should lie to get ahead. And it's kind of too little, too late. And he's not very good at it anyway.
Right. The not very good at it is the key part. It's like, I bet this is what a good player would do. So I'm going to do that, not thinking about the repercussions, which of course we will get to.
Yeah, yeah.
So Bex is next, saying she didn't think she was going to get that far.
Neither did we.
Neither did I, Bex. Neither did I.
Who did?
And quite frankly, I'm not convinced she actually knows where she is. Uh, Charlotte is next, then Ken, who says, to win, you have to sacrifice something or someone. And I'm like, if I see an altar and a knife, someone better run, you know?
I just wonder if, again, I've not seen, sort of other versions of Genius Game, if this is a standard format element that the semi-final just gets rid of, two or three people at once. So I wonder if
I
Ken knew that was probably coming, and that's why he was saying things like this.
I don't think so. According to what Ben had said at one point on his videos, there was some thought this might happen. I guess there was like a last minute switch in the contracts they signed or something like that.
Hmm.
But they didn't know exactly what it was
Okay.
or when it would happen, So I think they were genuinely surprised they were going to lose three people in one
Hmm.
episode here.
Yeah.
So David Tennant welcomes them back and says they have 34 garnets. Charlotte says the prize fund could be more. I, at this point, fully expect it will at least double, if not triple. But considering what happens this episode, maybe not. Maybe it's not going to be that much.
Yeah.
Uh,
They
you
took
had
his.
mentioned an episode or two ago, or maybe even more, that you thought it was odd that they weren't explaining who had how many garnets.
Yeah.
And I don't know. So Ben mentioned this on his video that the garnet count had shifted and not everyone necessarily knew because some people had like given garnets to other people for things and it just wasn't shown and not
Oh,
everybody knew about it.
okay.
And so it's possible they truly weren't showing the individual garnet count or they were, and I just got confused by what Ben said.
Yeah,
Um,
maybe they don't show it to the viewers because if we've not seen them trade in
right.
garnets, we're going to be
That could be.
confused. Like, how did that person end up? Not that we're keeping
Right.
track week to week, really, but
Right. Yeah.
yeah, maybe it is just easier to cut it out. And like we said, it kind of doesn't really matter much anyway.
Well, it turns out that it could have mattered. That there was a tiebreaker involved in one of the matches we're going to be talking about,
Mm, mm.
and the tiebreaker was how many garnets do you have?
Ah, okay, okay.
Actually, in the main match, that's the tiebreaker, or part of the tiebreaker, and so, but of course, we never get to that point, so it didn't matter. Now, speaking of the main match, it is Media Moguls. The goal is to become the biggest investor in four companies: radio, newspaper, TV, and social media. And then to have a big fight with the head of a nation on the social media one once you. No, wait, sorry. That's a whole totally
Wrong
different thing.
show.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't
Um,
be called Genius Game.
no, it certainly would not.
Maybe ironically.
Yeah.
Or sarcastically, yeah.
Yes. Players have £100,000 to invest over the course of 4 rounds. They deposit their investments in whatever companies they want before the end of each round. All checks have to be written at a podium down the hall. I didn't think this was important at first, so I didn't originally have it in my notes, and I had to go
Mm.
back because, yeah, it turns out to be kind of important. Um, the player who invests the most cash each round in each company gets an investor token. The one who invests the least is kicked out and can't invest in that company again. The amount of each investment is not revealed. If a player is the biggest investor in more than one company, they get an additional bonus token for each one after the first. Um,
You're you're doing well.
yeah, there's a lot going on in this
This
one.
is even helping me, and I've seen it.
Yes, yes. And also, you can't completely drain your account. But it's explained in this weird way because they say you can't bounce your check. But if you exactly drain your checking account to zero, the check doesn't actually bounce.
Yeah, you'd have to go over it.
And so this ends up being a confusing point to Ben from his video that apparently it was explained better on the show
Okay.
to us than it was to the players,
Hmm.
which partially explains what happened, but not to take anything away from Ken at the end. But it's, it was confusing to Ben as well. Like, wait, what do you mean zero is a bounce? Zero doesn't bounce.
Yeah.
Now, props to anyone who can balance their checking account down to such to get it exactly zero,
Yeah.
but
It was
uh
funny when they mentioned that in the rules. I did think at first I thought, well, that's really obvious. Why are they even including it? But then I thought, oh, this is somehow going to come into play.
yes,
So I did have it in the back of my mind. Although I mean, I then forgot it until it came up with Ken.
yeah,
But
yeah,
I had a feeling they were keeping that in for a reason.
yeah.
Um,
Now, it will shock everyone to know that after the rules are explained, Bodalia needed to have them explained to him again by the other players. At some point, if I were one of them, I would either just lie to him or not answer his questions. I mean, these people are far too nice to him.
yeah, I thought that a few times. I mean, more than a few times, and not just in this episode. I think even in the previous one and before, like Charlotte
Mm-hmm.
is always quite helpful. And yeah, repeatedly, I thought, just don't help him. Like, be vague, make a joke of it. Like, well, if you didn't understand, I'm not explaining it to you. But yeah, they, I mean, I guess they're just nice. They get on and they're
I mean,
friends, but still,
it is partially a social game. I know I just said that. It is partially a social game, and you don't want someone, teaming up against you just because you were a jerk to them.
mm,
There may also be the situation that 'cause I mentioned this way back in an early video that Ben did, that if you have questions, you can still ask production.
mm,
So it may be that the players were like, oh, God, we'll just answer him rather than him
yeah,
calling production in here
yeah.
and slowing everything down.
That makes
Uh,
sense. And I
so
mean, not to be incredibly shady, but I will be throughout this episode. Even if they explain it to Bedalia,
true.
he's not. Even if he gets the game, he's not going to then come up with a strategy that will like beat
Right.
Charlotte and Kent. So it kind of doesn't.
Yeah.
Well, it doesn't really matter that much.
Yeah. Yeah.
My first impression of the. I mean, it took me a bit to figure out the rules and understand it. Once they started playing it out, it
Hmm.
was fine. My first impression was it isn't wildly different from last week's main match. It's the same idea of invest a certain amount without telling anyone, like put the diamonds in the jar
Hmm.
and win the round by having the most, but don't get rid of everything. It just had a couple of extra layers. It was
Well,
like
and
last
it
week's main
wasn't,
match amplified.
yeah, and it wasn't theoretically a team game.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
so, uh, so the winner is, of course, the person with the most investor tokens at the end, and that person automatically goes to the final round. Player with the fewest is immediately eliminated. No death match, which gets a huge open mouthed reaction from Ben. And he is normally hard to surprise with these games. So the other three will play a death match with the two losers going home.
Mm.
Ken wonders if people will play conservatively to avoid being immediately sent packing. I think you have to go for broke here because if you play to not lose, you still have a 2/3 chance of losing anyway.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean,
Uh,
unless you somehow maneuver it so that you're playing against like Bex and Bodalia or something like that. But even then, there's still a chance if, depending on what it turns out to be.
yeah. It was similar to last week's main match. My instinct was I get the same as Ken's, just sort of you kind of just have to go hard in this one
Yeah.
early on. Um,
Yeah. So round one starts now. Bex acts like she's given up and says she's just going big on one and scattering the rest. Bodalia asks which one, and I thought it was just Bodalia being Bodalia, but she actually answers and says radio. But then she tells us she's trying to psych them out by making them think she's given up because if there's one thing Bex is, it is a master of the psychology game here.
yes, she's the puppet master,
Yes.
famously, or something.
Yeah. Bodalia asks if Charlotte has a strategy in mind because we know he doesn't have one in
Yeah.
mind. She says they should target one player as Ben joins them. Now, Here's the part we don't see that Ben talked about on his video. The initial plan was everyone target Ken. Get rid
Okay.
of the toughest player.
Mm.
But Beck said, no, I don't want to do that. So then
Okay.
she leaves and
And they're
Ken
like,
comes
we'll
in.
just do it on her then.
Right. That's exactly what happened. Ken comes in and they're like, hey, Ken, you want to do this plan where we all target Bex? And he was like, sure.
I mean, I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but the sort of weird thing, if Bex actually had just, unless I'm wrong, if she had just done what she pretended she was going to do, I mean, she still would have lost, but she wouldn't have lost so quickly.
Yes.
I just don't understand what
I
she
don't
thought was
know.
going to happen. Anyway,
Bodalia tells them he's going high on two, which is newspaper, I presume. He considers himself willing to take risks and knows he's the most trusted. But while Ken and Charlotte are the smartest, they are risk averse. Yeah, that's a terrible read, Bodalia. That is an absolutely terrible read to think that they are risk averse.
yeah, I know. It also became like this phrase of the episode. Like Bex was
Right.
using it as well. The risk of, and I just thought they were sort of throwing it out with
Yeah.
no. It didn't really match up. I don't know why they were saying it. It didn't
Yeah.
match the
No,
players at all. I didn't
no.
think.
So Bex privately tells Bedalia she's putting at least 50,000 in radio, but tells us she's trying to scare them because they're all risk averse.
Yes, of course.
And
Yes.
yes, and she's actually putting in 3,000. Bodalia tells the others about the radio 50,000 part. So Ben has this plan. He explains it, and then David Tennant re-explains it better.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, for us. If they each put in 24,500 for the other three, they'll remove Bex from the board of directors for at least three of those companies. Actually, not for the other three, for the four. I thought it was for the other three when I was initially watching it, but it's for all four. Then they'll get rid of her for at least three while everyone else loads up on tokens. Bex goes ahead and puts in 3,000 and then swears up and down to everybody else that she did what she said she'd do. And the other four are getting a little nervous, but Ken, but he says he'll do it, and they partner up to ensure everybody is telling the truth. Ken doesn't feel good about it because it's just sending Bex home, but he says she did it to herself.
Mm.
And little does he know at that moment that he did it to herself even more than he realized because she could have been part of the plan.
Yeah.
Uh,
This is so I'm jumping back up just a little bit here, but
mhm.
this even we're still fairly early on in the episode, and even already at this point, Bedalia is again Bedalia. I'm sorry for listening. Just sort of really annoying me because I looked at the timestamp. It took 8 minutes. 8 minutes into the episode, Bedalia breaks his honesty rule. That you just said Bex tells him, "I'm going to put in 50K. Don't tell
Mhm.
anyone," and he promises, and he then immediately goes and tells them, and like that's fine. Like, yeah, like you can do that. That's the game. It's just so hypocritical that this whole time he's been like, "I would never do that. I'm not going to play the game like that," and now suddenly he's like breaking his promises and telling people things he said he would. So I just thought, man, you're really a hypocrite at this point. And it just carries on throughout the game.
Well, but remember, he did that way back in like, what was it, episode two or something, when Ben said, Bedalia, I'll give you the token if you keep an eye on, was it
Oh
Indy?
yeah, it was yeah,
And then
that's
he
right.
walks over to Indy and says, yeah, my job is to keep an eye on you.
Yeah, actually, I forgot that. Yeah, so it just felt more. It felt like this time, Bex really was like,
Yes.
don't explicitly said don't tell them, and he just
But the thing is,
immediately.
she must have known he was going to say it because she lied to him,
Well,
fully
yeah,
expecting him to tell the others.
yeah. But anyway, that's just
Because,
phase one of
yeah,
my annoyance with Bedalia.
yes, because her plan only works if they truly all believe her
Yeah, and are scared to
and
go up
are
against her.
scared away. I mean, even then, her plan doesn't really work. But, in her mind, her plan works that way.
Yeah, I think because, and you've said this, I think she just doesn't understand the game at all.
Right.
So it's just this weird, meaningless plan.
Yeah. Yeah. So Bex goes to write another check, although I'm not sure what she's writing because she doesn't end up depositing another check. But
Mm.
Bodalia heads to the check writing podium with her, where he modifies one of his checks to make it 24,600 instead of 500 and take the lead in one particular area. And then nobody else notices because they were off doing, we later find out that they were, off talking to each other or checking other things. I think they were mostly keeping an eye on Ken, worried more
Mm.
about him.
Okay. And this was
Um,
11 minutes in, by the way. So 8 minutes for the
oh,
first
yes.
honesty break, 11 minutes to screw them over for the second time.
Well, he said he would do whatever it takes.
Yep. Well, well, well.
Um,
Vidalia, how the tables have turned.
yes. Uh,
And
so
sorry, I know I keep going on about this, but I just thought he had the audacity to sort of spearhead Amanfi's exit because
yes,
Amanfi was so dishonest and he
yes.
thought this was awful. And I'm like, you're just doing the same thing now. It's
Yeah, that's the part that's the worst is honesty, 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 honesty. I'm going to go after the people who aren't honest. How dare you not be honest? And then as they get to almost at the end, he's like, oh, maybe I should be dishonest.
yeah. It was Vidalia is Macbeth and Amanfi is King Duncan. That's my Shakespearean reference for the episode. Any Shakespeare
Appropriate that
fans out there? I'm
you
sure
would
you're laughing
reference
a
the
lot.
Scottish play.
Of course, yes.
Um,
Yes,
yes,
we even though we're not in a theatre, I shouldn't have said his name.
right. um, so, so yeah, he does tell us that at some point you have to bluff. And I do find it funny that he calls it bluffing instead of what it actually is, which is lying. Like he won't even allow himself to consider it lying or speak the word out loud. So he
Yeah.
has to make up an excuse.
Mhm.
It reminds me, I'm rewatching an old Survivor season right now, and you'd think this could be a lie, but we're not playing that game. Where all these people have these honesty pledges and oh we promise this, we promise that, and then they realize they want to get rid of one of the people in their group of five, and they're like, hey, you know what, Dan was the only one who promised her that she could be in our group of five. We never did, so technically we are not breaking our promise, just Dan is.
Hmm.
And so it's the same thing. It's like, okay, you're gonna lie on a technicality. All
Yeah,
right, go
yeah.
go for it.
I was
So
also kind of hoping we get a flashback later on. I mean, it never comes, but I thought it would be great if we got a flashback and actually Charlotte, Ken, and Ben all were secretly agreeing to screw Bedalia over, and this served him right. But but that was just wishful thinking.
yes. So the results. The newspaper is won by the four working together.
Yeah.
Ben, Ken, Charlotte, Bedalia. And Bex is removed. Radio, same. Social media, same. TV, Bedalia wins. With Bex removed, again. Everyone is shocked at Bedalia.
Mm.
But it means Bex is out because of her odd and, quite frankly, really dumb plan.
Yeah. And she then just has to hang around.
Yes, it's so
It's
funny.
really weird. Like it feels like I just thought, what's the point in her just wandering around with? Like I'm sure it was fun for her, but it feels like almost a flaw in the format that this could have. It's just sort of quite messy that she's just sort of there with nothing to do.
It
I
is,
sort
but
of
it's
want,
kind of funny too, the way
yeah,
they just, ignore her most of the time.
yeah, yeah.
So Bex is out and Ken apologizes, but Bodalia, this will surprise you, is confused and asks her, which one did you win? And it's like, it's right there in front of you. She did not win.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe they don't get the same graphics we do, but she didn't win, dude.
Yeah, yeah.
So the scores are put up, and what I didn't realize when I went through the rules was they also find out how much cash each one has left in the bank. So Ben, Ken, and Charlotte each get 5 tokens and have 2,000 left. Bodalia gets 7 tokens and has 1,900.
Hmm.
Bedalia claims he only did it because he thought Ken was going to do something, which is complete BS. Ben says in front of everyone that now it makes sense for the other 3 to work together and get ahead of him. Charlotte suggests finding a way to tie it up, but Bedalia claims, well, first he claims he'd go along with that, but the other three privately agree he would say he'll go along with anything, though Charlotte still seems to believe he feels bad.
Yeah, Charlotte's a bigger person than me. I have to accept. Like she's saying
Yes.
she doesn't hold him again. She doesn't hold it against him. She's not mad.
Mm-hmm.
I thought I'd hold it against him. Like, she's yeah, Charlotte, you're a much nicer player than I would be. I'd be really pissed off about this until he was gone.
Bedalia pulls Ken aside and tells him that whatever they come up with, one of them will just screw over the others at the end anyway. And, this gets back to what you were saying with Bex running around with Bedalia, even though she's already lost. And I think she just wants in on everything and to
Yeah,
have some fun,
yeah.
She has no stakes now, so she could just listen to every conversation and, put in her 2 cents.
And
Uh,
finally understand the game.
well, let's not go that far.
I'd love if we had a moment of her going, "Oh, now I get
Yeah.
it."
Uh, Bedalia is trying to convince Ken to let him win. And Ken is like, yeah, I don't see the upside there. It
Yeah,
seems to
oh.
me like Bedalia maybe doesn't realize there's no second token of life in this game like there has been in the past.
Yeah,
Like maybe he thinks, well, if you just let me win, I'll give you a token.
yeah.
And the other thing is, Ken has helped him win before, so it's just standard for him is, oh, I'll just, get a direction from you and then I'll win.
Yeah, I found it really. This is phase 3 or 4 of my infuriation with Bedelia, just sort
Yeah.
of trying to commandeer Ken for further advice on how
Yeah.
to win, and I just thought, why? Yeah, would he help you? Like, figure it out yourself. I found it, and I'm glad that Ken, yeah, didn't help, didn't just sort of
Right.
acquiesce.
Right. So Ben and Charlotte talk, and they don't think Bedalia is smart enough to realize how he can win.
Hmm.
So they'll just rattle off a bunch of numbers. Audio listeners only. You just missed the look on Matthew's face. The They'll rattle off a bunch of numbers, say they're going for a tie, and it'll go right past him. Which I just think it's funny that they're just blatantly at this point being like, "Yeah, Bedalia's not that bright."
Yeah.
Charlotte tells us these games are about deception as well as trust. And it's like, yeah, well, we know that. Someone should have told people like Bedalia and Bex about 5 episodes ago.
Yeah.
So Ben and Charlotte share their plan with everyone else. And it's funny because they bring them into the room as if there's anyone else to hear. It's like they all go into one room. It's like, you could be standing anywhere. There's no one else.
I thought the exact same thought.
Yeah.
I get they're just so used to that being their place, but
Yeah.
they don't need to.
So the plan is to put the same amount in for everything but TV, where they all put in 100 each and Bedalia puts in 0. And then they rip up their TV checks and nobody plays it for the future. It's funny because this is a point in particular where I can hear Bex in the background trying to ask questions like, what's the benefit of tying it? And everyone is just completely ignoring her. They're not even bothering with her at all.
Yeah.
So, that's as they should. Bedalia hears them out and then says, nah, I'm going to play the game based on the position I'm in now. And then the others only have like 5 minutes to come up with a counter plan after they shoo him out of the room. He tries to bring Ken again, and this is the best moment of the whole episode. Ben asks why. Ken says Bedalia wants to convince him to let him win, and Ben replies, "Fuck off with that shit."
Ben really throughout, to be honest, has delivered some great moments. He's been a great character to watch. We as a spoiler alert for the end of the podcast, we've got a voice note from someone praising Ben, so we will return to this. But yeah, it was really good fun.
Yes, and that is the exactly appropriate response to that situation.
Yes.
And I just earned this video an R rating. The three of them realize that if he had really made a mistake and wanted to rectify it, he'd work with them. So it was clear he was trying to gain an edge, which Charlotte finds annoying.
Yeah.
So guess what, Bodalia? You have finally, you were talking about how patient she was. You have finally annoyed Charlotte.
Yeah, that's bad. And
Yeah.
it's just so short-sighted of Bedalia. I think, like, what did
Hmm.
he think was going to happen if? And I understand the benefit of, like, I think Charlotte said it. It's a benefit to get ahead early in this game, which so that's fine. But it's like he didn't anticipate. It's like he did it. He won the extra token, and then suddenly went, oh, what now? Like it suddenly occurred to him that they
Well,
might be
that,
annoyed with him.
yeah, that's what I mean when I said earlier that he was doing something that he, well, maybe I said this about Bex, but either way, it applies to him too. He was doing something that he thought a smart player would do,
Yeah, yeah,
but he didn't know how to follow it up.
yeah,
Because I
exactly.
think if Ken had done this, or Ben or Charlotte, they would have known how to stay ahead
Yeah,
after they got ahead. He
yeah.
has no clue.
Yeah, and I actually really, I know one of the complaints of the show is it's too cerebral and it's too
Mhm.
complicated, and actually, I found myself really enjoying watching Ben, Charlotte, and Ken in this episode. I'm just so impressed with how quickly
Yes.
they figure out how their way around the game. It really, yeah, I just enjoyed watching really smart people under pressure come up with a strategy that worked. I thought it
Yes.
was just, it's just so clever of them. So I thought, yes, this is what I wanted Genius Game to be. Really smart people doing really impressive things.
Yeah, and that's why it is. I've seen a number of people say this. It is sad that some of the best episodes, like the two best episodes so far, have been at the end, at the tail end,
Mm, yeah,
when so many people stopped watching.
yeah, yeah.
And you know, I don't know what you can. Well, there's nothing you could do about it now unless you get in a TARDIS. But so yeah, it is good, but as yeah, I had mentioned AJ Mass. He had sent in a question to us, and he used to write for my website as well. Uh, he wrote a post on Blue Sky to one of the game. I don't know if I don't know if they're a producer or a game designer for the show, whatever, and said something like the game, watching the game was perfect. The game design was perfect. The casting was the problem.
Mm,
And I'm not sure that's 100% true early on, because I do think there were some flaws with the way it was handled early on, but it definitely was like the rest of the way. Um, because remember, AJ's question when he sent it in a couple weeks ago was basically, did Rodalia, screw the whole series by being cast?
yeah, yeah.
So,
Well, not just Bedelia.
well, right, right. Um, So anyway, getting back to currently, Ben, Ken, and Charlotte agree to put in 664 pounds in three of them, but not TV. Ben and Charlotte want to all see them write their checks and deposit them, and Ken agrees while also saying at this point it's everyone for themselves. But he also recognizes if any of them deviate, it'll end up with a Bodalia win, so it kind of forces inherent trust. Bodalia puts 800 into TV and 51 into another. Uh, in the last seconds, Ken realizes they've only left themselves with 6 pounds each. And Ben says, yeah, one for each of the two remaining rounds. But Ken brings up the,
You have to have something left. You have to have
yeah,
sort of
but I don't know why
reserve.
it was 6 pounds. I may have gotten something wrong there. Maybe it was 4 pounds each. Does that make sense?
I think it was
Is it
six, and they were going to do, yeah,
maybe,
and they were going to
yeah,
have, I can't
two
remember.
and one? I don't know. Yes. Whatever it was, they didn't leave themselves one extra to get
Yeah.
to keep it above zero.
This is why I'm not on Genius Game.
Yeah. And they all quickly changed their social media check to 663. So the round two results, it works as planned. Ben, Ken, and Charlotte are the top investors for newspaper, radio, and social media. So Bodalia is removed from there. He's the top for TV. So the other three are all removed from that one. So they all have 8 tokens.
Yeah. Uh, maybe you're going to say what I want to
Mhm.
say, but but Dahlia, there's a sort of little confessional bit here with him saying he thinks it's better of the other three to lock him out of the other companies outside of TV. And I just think it's so funny. It's again
Yes.
so hypocritical. And then he says this thing that makes no sense. He says, "Well, they would have taken the lead if they could have." And I thought, but they didn't. They
Right.
they they could have, and they didn't. So you're saying something that is completely untrue. Like
Yeah.
he's saying it like, "Well, I only took the lead because I had the opportunity." I'm like, no, you all did,
Yeah.
and they chose to trust one another. So he's just saying things to sort of make himself feel better.
Yeah. And the other thing is, they're better at it than you are.
Yeah.
No matter what else, even if they could have, and they would have done it so they didn't then lose.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, so round three is pretty quick. He puts £1 in TV, which is the only place he can. The other three each put one into the other three. So the results, same as round two. Now Ben, Ken, and Charlotte each have 11 tokens, while Bedalia has 9. Each of Ben, Ken, and Charlotte have £6 left now,
Okay.
which means 5 each to spend. So I was right when I said 6 earlier.
Okay. Yeah, yeah.
So as round 4 begins, they don't think there's a way for two of them to team up to boot the third out of the tie. So either they all do the same or they go on their own, as Ken says. And I'm pretty sure he says they play cow tickly. Now, I
Yeah.
rewound and watched that a few times. I have no idea what that means. Ben has no idea what that means. Matthew, do you have any idea what that means?
I have no idea what that means. I
Okay.
thought it was like I just thought this must be a term from a card game or something. But yeah, I have no idea what that means or what he was
I
talking
wanted to
about.
look it up, but I was afraid of what the results would be for looking up cow tickly online. Uh,
Yeah, maybe right, a listener, you hit us with a YouTube comment,
yeah,
explain what Ken meant by that.
yes. Now, I have to jump in here with another thing from Ben's video because I mentioned, they thought that garnets would tie and other things would tie. So they had not been told what the tiebreaker was
Mhm.
until the break between rounds 3 and 4. And then
Oh.
production came in and said, here is what the tiebreaker is going to be. But we really don't want to tie.
Hmm.
And so that was, I don't know if they quite said it that way, but it was clear to Ben that they really did not want to tie.
Yeah. And are
And
you saying that they told them that the Garnets would decide the tiebreak?
at one point, they were one of the, yes,
Uh,
like remaining money might have been one, garnets were another. So yeah, it was. And the thing was, if they had tied, I think what Ben said is Ben and Ken both had the same number of garnets,
mhm.
where Charlotte had fewer. And so she would have lost if the other two tied. So obviously she was not, or if all three tied, she would have lost immediately. And then for those two, they would have had to go on to another tiebreaker.
Yeah. I'm gonna speculate and say maybe the reason the producers probably thought we don't want a tie is because I would feel pissed off as a player if at this point they suddenly explained, oh, by the way, if there's a tie, here's how it works, and we didn't tell you
Mm-hmm.
this before. Because that
Yeah.
might have, if one of them was, oh, it'll be whoever's got the most garnets. That kind of, if you had known that earlier, might have affected the way you played the game, and like you
Yeah.
might have been relying on a tie break, and then thought, oh shit, that's how I've only got like one garnet. So
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if producers are like, oh man, we didn't explain this earlier, so we don't want to have to use it, that sort of thing.
I think also then they have to spend a bunch of time explaining what the tiebreaker is. And
Yeah,
they have, it ends up, yeah, it bogs things down,
yeah,
I
yeah.
think. Now, would that have mattered? Would Ken have gone for the win anyway? Maybe. But so he then pulls his biggest trick of the season,
Yeah,
the biggest trick of the season.
yeah.
Sorry, British show, the series. Um, well, and quite frankly, the series is only going to have one season
Yeah.
anyway. So he writes out a check for £3 in front of them for social media, walks over and deposits it. And Ben immediately thinks the same thing that I do, which is somehow between the podium and walking over, he has swapped the checks and is
Ooh.
going to, yes,
Sleight
deposit
of
the wrong
hand.
one,
Magician.
so that it doesn't end up, being that way. But no, he shows it, he proves it, and puts it in.
Mm.
He says he won't be as obvious with his last pound, leaving Ben and Charlotte to realize they each have to play to win. And it almost seems like it will come down to random luck in terms of what they put where.
Yeah, I couldn't figure out if Ken really was just like having fun and was like, "Hey
Right.
guys," like, or part of me did think he's got some plan and I have no idea what it is, but there
I,
must be something deliberate
I
behind
thought he was
this.
just messing with their heads, quite honestly. Um, so it comes down to literally the last second, and Ben puts in his checks. And it looked like he had a change of mind, like literally with no time left, but
Hmm.
he couldn't run back down. See, this is what I was saying earlier about the podiums being important. He would have had to run down the hall to write his
Yeah.
change, and he did not have time to make it back and forth. Um, so also, we do see that Ken, well, I can't remember if we see it now or in the flashback, but at some point, Ken throws checks in the others also. Um, so the round four results: newspaper, Ken; radio, Ken; social media, Ben and Charlotte; TV, Bedalia. Ken wins the game. But first, we get a flashback uh, to Ken explaining to Bedalia and Bex that he has purposely bounced his social media check because that is the third company. So he put 3 and 2 in newspaper and radio. Those two counted. By the time it got to social media, it didn't. So Ben and Charlotte each put 4 into social media, thinking they would beat him there, and he would get either newspaper or radio, and they'd all tie.
Hmm. I I I mean, it's so clever. I don't
Mm-hmm.
know if I missed it or if they didn't explain to us that they count the checks sort of in order and
They
and
did not explain it to us,
yeah.
and Ben said in his video he thinks that Ken actually got it a little wrong.
Oh, okay.
That they do it first according to what the value is, the highest first,
Oh, okay.
and then according to the order. So it
Okay.
ends up being the same.
Hmm.
So he had 6. They put in the 3. They take the 3 from the first one. Then they skip over the 2. They take the 3 from the second one, but that takes you down to 0, which they consider to be bounced, even though normal people would not.
Hmm.
So they throw out that 3, and then they accept the 2. So it still works, in part because of the weird check bouncing way.
Hmm. Yeah.
So yeah, this was quite frankly a brilliant outside the box way of thinking. And, Ben agrees. Yes, this is truly a genius move here.
Yeah.
Um,
Like you said, seems like the best move of the show.
yeah,
Yeah, I just thought this is so clever, and I thought Ken deserves to win the show for this alone.
yeah,
It's just it was so good, so good.
yeah. And he gets 6 garnets for it, as if that mattered.
Yeah,
Uh,
I wrote the same thing. Winning the Garnets just seems pointless. I mean, unless the finale is going to demand that they use their individual Garnets for some
and then
significant
they're going to end
element
up
of
winning like
gameplay.
they're going to end up winning £5,000 because they're all going to have they're both going to have to spend all their garnets to win.
Yeah, yeah, but yeah, felt a little bit
Yeah.
neither here nor there.
So Bex is finally gone. And I say finally just because she's been hovering. Um, and gives her garnets to the dealer to hand over to the eventual winner. Uh, the death match, the 3-way death match is next.
Ooh.
Dice deception. Yes. David Tennant says bluffing and outwitting is the key. So Bodalia's right in this one. Each player has 2 dice numbered 0 to 5. The idea is to be the first to get every combination from 0 to 10. And they each roll secretly, declare the sum of their dice, and put forward 1 for their opponents to see. And then they have 10 seconds to decide if everyone is being honest. If nobody questions them, the number is locked in. If they use one of their 5 bluffing tokens and catch a liar, they can remove an already lit up number, an already called out number from that person. But if that person was telling the truth, that person gets to take one off of the accuser's line. If they use all of their bluffing tokens, they can use a garnet as a final bonus token, which it seems to me like they're just finding some way to get garnets involved in the game.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I was kind of glad in a way. I thought, oh, okay, I like that they have a use. Although it was a bit of a shame they could only use one, unless I'm misunderstanding that.
Yeah, they could only use one, and all it serves to do is reduce the prize pot.
Yeah, I thought,
I mean, they obviously everyone's going to have one at this stage. There's no way you get to this point in the game and someone has 0 garnets.
yeah, it would have been. I thought it'd be nice if they could have used any amount of garnets, and then
Yeah,
maybe they don't just disappear off the table. Someone else can sort of steal them from you or whatever. But
yeah. Um,
I again, these rules, you've explained it very clearly. Me- My notes just say these rules, holy shit. Now,
yeah.
actually, as the game plays out, it's not that complicated, and I figured it out very, very quickly.
Hmm.
But just the explanation of them, I
Right.
was like, I gave up. I just thought I'll just watch it and see. And
Well, there,
again, it was fine, but
yeah. There's one more rule, and that's if they get their 0 marked off, it
mm,
can't be removed.
yeah,
But if they're caught bluffing a 0, the opponent gets to remove 2 others instead of 1, or the person with the 0 gets to remove 2 from the accuser if they actually did have a 0.
yeah,
Um, Charlotte and Ben seem excited and think this will be fun. Bodalia agrees, but in a way that he doesn't mean it. It's like when someone says, "Hey, let's go, let's go run a marathon," and someone else is like, "Yeah, that would be great.
yeah.
Let's do that."
Let's go skydiving!
Yeah,
Yay!
yeah. Um, and indeed, once again, his opponents have to explain the game to him
Yeah,
because he does not get it. And then Charlotte even gives him helpful hints like, don't say 10 and show a 4. And at that moment, I'm like, why are you helping him? But the
yeah,
funny thing is, that actually does turn out to be confusing advice, as we'll find out as soon as the game begins.
yeah.
Um, and so, yes, they start. My immediate thought is if I rolled 1-0, I would bluff a 0 because there's literally nothing to lose.
I
Uh,
did not have that. I am not smart enough to immediately figure out what Charlotte and Ben did.
well, no, they still went one beyond what I was like, I at least wanted the physical 0 to bluff the
Oh
0.
yeah.
They go further than
They just go for it
yes,
when it's so obvious
right.
it can't be the
Yes.
case, which
Uh,
works so well. And I thought, oh, that's so clever. I would have had to
mhm.
have played this game 10 times to have then
Yeah.
figured out that was a great strategy. But again, Vidalia is just clueless. He just has.
Yeah.
It's just so obvious he is so outplayed at the get-go.
Oh yeah.
So. Also,
Yeah.
I
So
just
he
loved Ken, by the way, pulling up a chair to watch it on the screen on
yes.
his own. It was really
Yeah.
funny.
And like narrating it. He's the play-by-play announcer there,
Yeah,
because he has no one to talk to.
yeah, it
They
was
went
great.
he went from being in a room with like 4 or 5 other people to having nobody. Um so Badalia goes first because he had the lowest score in the main match. He rolls a 1 and declares it. The other 2 roll numbers and put out numbers higher than 0 while declaring 0.
Mm,
Ken in the lounge, is talking about this is like, ooh, this is the best time to do it because once you have 0, it's locked in. And I had to admit that I was still a bit confused by this strategy at first, unless the idea was go ahead and waste your bluffing tokens.
yeah. I assumed
Now,
it was just, yeah,
right.
people don't want to waste them, so.
Yeah, but then the other question is it really a waste if you're actually accomplishing the goal of preventing them from getting the 0?
Yeah.
But if you get the 0 now, you don't have to risk 2 of your own by later calling a bluff.
Yeah.
So it's got all these things going through it.
I do wonder
Nobody,
if part of it was that they knew Bedalia just wouldn't get it. So they're like, let's just do it now
yeah,
before he figures anything out.
yeah. I mean, that could be part of it. Now, next round, Charlotte keeps it up by declaring 10 and putting out a 4, which was exactly the scenario she told Bedalia not to do.
Yeah.
uh, which I think is I bet she saw it and was like, oh, this will be really funny, and, put it up there. Um, Ken narrates that she's just trying to get them to use up bluffing tokens. And of course, she has no other spots she can lose at this point because you can't lose the 0. Ben bluffs 1, Bedalia bluffs 10. Those get through, but Ben challenges Charlotte. Charlotte says she's surprised Ben did that, and he says he is too. Next up, Ben and Bedalia bluff and get through. Charlotte bluffs, but Ben encourages Bedalia to use a bluff token against her, so hers is canceled. And so it turns out the real reason Ben used that first bluff token against Charlotte was to encourage Bedalia to use bluff tokens, going forward. Because, of course, that means he can't use them on Ben. Charlotte tells Bedalia to be careful and tells us the game isn't about who can bluff the best, but rather who can get their opponents to waste their tokens the best. The game moves along, and they actually fast forward through a bunch of them.
Yeah.
Until Charlotte only has 1 spot left and 2 tokens. Bedalia has 3 spots and no tokens. Ben has 1 spot and 3 tokens.
I was really glad they had the montage
Yes.
of just running through it because, yeah, it seemed like nobody, we weren't really missing anything. We weren't missing anyone using a garnet or
right
losing tokens. So I thought it worked to just get to the tense part where we're reaching the end. Yeah.
So Charlotte rolls a 6 and needs a 9, but doesn't want to lose any. So she declares 6 and puts out both dice to prove it. Ben declares 8 as his final number and puts out a 3, which I don't necessarily understand because, of course, Charlotte is going to challenge it and win, or else he wins the game, which she does. But Charlotte still seems to think Ben is in a key position because he has more challenges. So it was just to get her to waste a challenge. Mm-hmm. She gets annoyed with Bedalia and tells him to play for himself, and he says he is. But she says she can't win 2 against 1. Bedalia does admit to us that if there's a choice of her or Ben winning, he would take her out. And apparently this may have been something that Bedalia said to Ben earlier. So, Ben may have known that.
Okay.
Charlotte is trying to figure out how to get him to play for himself because he doesn't understand the game or the rules. She says this out loud. That he doesn't understand the game or the rules. I had to make that my first video of this episode because it is so evergreen. It is like the entire season could just be this clip played on repeat.
Yeah, I laughed very much when I saw your clip. I have shared it to the Trader Instagram story.
So Bedalia asks about playing a garnet, and all of them take 1 out.
Yeah, it asks the Scottish dealer who has the most Scottish, I'm pretty sure, Glaswegian accent. I've noticed her before in the series. Mm-hmm. There's something about hearing, that we don't hear Scottish people on TV all the time. I'm used to hearing English and American voices, mm-hmm. and it's just this women saying you're all free to place a garnet if you so choose. It's just so Scottish. It's just like she doesn't even say to place a garnet. She just says free to place a garnet, and it made me laugh.
So they all do that. Charlotte then, next round puts out a low number and declares her final spot of a 9. But she tells Bedalia, don't use your garnet or else Ben will win. And then if he agrees, she'll let his next one go by. Mm-hmm. Ben says, well, then Bedalia will win. But they shake on it. And Ben uses a token on Charlotte. Bedalia did tell the truth this time. Bedalia has only now 1 left to fill, while the other 2 have 2. Charlotte swears up and down she will not use a bluffing chip on Bedalia. Next round, Ben and Charlotte declare their numbers, and neither are challenged. But Ben does indeed challenge Bedalia's declaration of a 2 when he put out a 0 die. And the only question was, did he actually roll a 2?
Oh
And I'm
man.
like, yes, that was exactly my feeling because Charlotte really thought he did.
So did I.
Uh yeah, and he did not.
Oh,
So,
I thought if he wins this damn game,
yeah.
I am not watching anymore.
Yeah.
Oh, I found this very tense.
Yeah. Charlotte claims her final number. Ben doesn't bother since neither of his dice would work, but he has to use his final bluffing token on her because Bedalia won't use his garnet, saying they made a deal. And Ben was like, for the whole game. And Bedalia says, for enough of the game.
Yeah,
Um,
so
yeah.
so vague.
Uh, Ben tells Charlotte she still has a chip, so it's up to her to block Bedalia the next time. And she does. Her number makes it through, even though it's an obvious bluff. Ben made an honest declaration of a low number. And Ben is really getting screwed at this point by his terrible rolls. Like
Yeah,
he has nothing that he can even use. Um,
yeah, it's tough.
which is
And
yeah, which is part of the reason that Ben and Charlotte keep whenever they force someone to undo a number, it's a 9 or a 10
mhm,
because those are the hard ones to get.
yeah. Um, throughout a lot of this as well, Bedalia can't even keep count of how many chips Ben has. Like he has to keep asking Charlotte, how many does he have
Mm-hmm.
left? I thought, how hard is it to count down from five?
Yeah.
Jeez. So right up until his last moments in the game, he's still relying on other people and failing at a quite simple
Yes.
element of the
Yes.
game.
Isn't he the DJ? Isn't he
He's
the
the Doctor DJ.
Dr. DJ? I don't even want to think about this in terms of being a doctor, but even being a DJ, I'm going to count down the top 5 songs, and then he plays one, and he'll be like, "Wait, what number
How
are we on now?"
many? Yeah.
Yeah. Um, um. So now, somewhere in here, we must have missed one or something because Ben did say on his video, and this is funny enough that I want to mention it, that he gets so mad at some point after he's out of chips, and he wants either Charlotte or it must have, yeah, one of the two, either Charlotte or Bedalia, to use theirs. That to prove he's not going to use his garnet, he gets mad and he throws his garnet across the room.
Oh.
And he said, I'm surprised they didn't show that. And I'm like, yeah, me too. That was, damn it. I'd like to see that.
Yeah, that would have been good TV.
Yeah. But no, they don't. And apparently the dealer must, bring back here.
Here's your garnet.
Yeah. uh, so anyway, it all comes down to this. Ben, again, honestly declares his low number. Bedalia declares a 10 and shows a 1. Charlotte declares a 9 and shows a 3. So, but Ben has to use his garnet because Bedalia just sits back. So I guess it doesn't all come down to this when I said it did. After a round of nothing interesting, it really does come down to, they all have one spot open.
Mm-hmm.
Bedalia and Charlotte have a garnet. Ben tries to convince Bedalia to block her. And then when Bedalia puts out his number, Ben says, oh, you guys need to block each other. And as Bedalia goes to do that, Charlotte says she won't block him if he doesn't block her. And they hold their garnets like over the table. And this part is where, although we hear like on TV, we hear tick, 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 tick. They don't have that there. They have the dealer say your 10 seconds starts now, and the dealer say time is up.
Mm.
When she says time is up, he drops it. But as Charlotte points out, too late.
Yeah.
And Ben, who had been trying to convince, Bedalia of the rules of the game in the moment, realizes this means Charlotte won because in this round, she went first.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
I couldn't, at first I thought, wait, isn't this just a draw? But I didn't realize that was an element of it.
right. And I was thinking the same thing, but I was like, oh, so this is actually similar to what happened in the death match last week.
Yeah.
In the death match where you didn't have to go an even number of turns for that conveyor belt. It really did matter whose fell off first.
That's right.
And so that's why it was rotating. Who went first was And so, yeah, Bedalia still doesn't realize he's lost at this point, that Charlotte, has won the game.
Yeah.
And he just handed it to her.
Yeah. Yeah, because yeah, again, he just the same thing again, just doesn't really
Yeah,
understand all of the rules and just can't keep up with it enough to actually put together a
right.
plan or stop someone else from winning.
Yeah. Yeah. And this, as much as we said earlier, it was a great move by Ken in the main match. This was a great move by Charlotte.
Yeah.
I mean, she knew her opponent's weakness was that he doesn't really understand.
Yeah.
And she used that against him. If I were Ben, I would have been super pissed. But on the other hand, he was using Bedalia earlier, and Charlotte just did the same thing, but did a better job at the end with it.
Yeah. I was so
Uh,
impressed with Ben and Charlotte in this game, but particularly Charlotte because yeah, I know at one point she was it looked like she was like, oh man, I can't win now, and she was getting a little bit frustrated, but she was still able to, do the strategy and figure out the
right.
maths of the game and but also emotionally sort of manipulate Bedalia. And I thought, oh, that
Hmm.
she is really mentally sort of strong. So
Right.
I was so impressed with her as a player here.
Yeah. And I guess this does come back to answer, our question earlier of why do people keep being nice to him and explaining the game to Bedalia? And the answer is clearly, revealed here that she ended up using it to her advantage.
Yeah, you use his trusts against him when you need to.
Right. Um, so Ben, very gracious. I said I'd be pissed if I were him, but he is very gracious and everything. In his final words to us, Bodalia says he is in some ways a genius because he got that far. And I'm like, sure, Bodalia, whatever lets you sleep at night. You just tell yourself that.
Yeah. He calls it genius. I call it luck.
Yes, yes.
But
Um,
we say this all the time on the podcast. It's like a lot of these games, you actually can coast through to a final and
mhm.
maybe even win Traitors US Season 3 by doing not very much.
Yes. So that is the end of episode 7. Next time, head to head for all the garnets. Um, and there's a social component where previously eliminated players are involved.
Yeah.
I know I, for one, am really interested to see who Paul helps because we all remember Paul very well. And,
Yep,
I'm sure
Ep1.
he's been seething for the last week about whoever it was that did something to him. And I have no clue who that was. So
uh,
I think was
yes.
it Ken? I think, did
I think it
Ken?
was a guy called Scott who then
Oh,
ended up going
that's
out in
right. It was
episode 2.
Scott.
Scott, the
Yeah.
Scottish man, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I quite liked seeing that some the former players are going to come back, and I really want to see Amanfi get his revenge.
Yes. Well,
Although
he can't fully get his.
he can't get
Yeah.
it on Bedalia now, but
Yeah. Maybe he just like sucker punches Bedalia when he walks out there.
he'll back the person that Bedalia is not backing.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's it for this episode.
Yes. Yeah, and I like who, same as you've said a couple of times. I really enjoyed the episode. Thought it was probably the best one. Someone has already uh left a comment. I think it was
Mhm.
Harry sent me a message on Instagram saying, "Oh, this best episode
Yeah.
of the season." And yeah, I would agree with that. I found it really tense. Although the game rules were complicated, I could follow them once they got going.
Right.
I just, Ken's genius move, Charlotte's great play in the death match. Yeah, that moment where we thought Bedalia actually might win
Oh God.
was awful. Yeah, I thought it was a really entertaining episode.
Yes, I agree. I agree. Now, I know you have the one comment. I got two questions on Blue Sky. And both of them are about Bex. They're both related, even though they were from two completely different people.
Oh, okay.
So Purple Jordan asked, When Bex realized it was 4-on-1, why didn't she try to eavesdrop? She could have easily done a 30K, 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 0K split and won the whole
Mhm.
thing. And Cool Squirtle asked, how funny would it have been if, after saying I'm putting in 50K on one, she put 24,999 on each or 33K on three? Just outright winning after one round would have been peak reality TV. And then Squirtle continued, I love the episode, especially Ken's move, but so much lost opportunity for Bex.
Yeah. I,
Yes.
I mean, I guess the answer to both of those is it just wouldn't have occurred to her to have
Yeah, it's
done either of
Bex.
those things. And even if she had eavesdropped, I still don't think she would have then used what she learned to put together a strategy that would
Right.
help her.
Yeah,
Sorry,
she was
Bex.
the one. I mean, she had, as we mentioned, as I mentioned earlier, she had an opportunity to be part of the four and turned it down. So she thought she had this great idea, and it was just a terrible idea.
Hmm.
Um, and I mean, even if it had worked, even if she had told them, if she had only put it in on the one and won that one, that would have been the only one she was
Hmm.
allowed to do the rest of the time.
Yeah,
So she
yeah.
would have had all this, 97,000 pounds left.
To put
And
on one.
yeah, it wouldn't have mattered.
Yeah.
She would have gotten a grand total of 4 tokens and lost anyway.
Yeah, I think there was a moment where she was asking, I think Charlotte, or maybe it was either her or Bedalia were asking like Charlotte to reiterate the rules. And I wonder if Bex thought, which actually I have to admit, I thought when the game started, I misunderstood that you're only blocked from a company for one round. Like the main match in the very first episode of Ginny's game. So I thought maybe she thought that she could come back into the game as it went on. I don't think maybe she realized you
Maybe.
that was you blocked for the whole game. I don't know. Just a guess.
Yeah. Um, so yeah, I mean, the answer is yes. If she were a better player, she could have, done. I haven't run these different scenarios here,
Hmm.
but she could have done one of those things, but she's not a better player,
No.
and so it's, I mean, you're asking, you're what's the phrase? Sorry to do this to you, Bex, but a monkey doing a math problem. Um, you're you you're asking someone whose mind does not work that way. She's said it many times,
Yeah.
that she's the social aspect person. But then when they offered her a chance to be in the social group, she turned it down.
Yeah. And you're right. I mean, we're not really saying all that much that I'm sure Bex didn't. She said herself on this episode, she
Yeah.
was like, "Oh man, I was just here with." She called them brainiacs. I'm here with these
Hmm.
brainiacs, and I can't understand games. So, at least she knows. Look, she was just here to do what she could do, and she wasn't. At least she wasn't deluded, is what I'm saying. She didn't
Yeah.
think that she was up to their level. So,
Yeah.
that's at least she was
Right.
kind of self-aware-ish.
Right.
I have a couple of messages. One from Anne on Instagram, who also mentions Bex, actually. But first, Anne says, just started listening to your Genius Game shows, which I'm finding very useful to understand the game. Personally, I'm finding the group antics getting in the way of the gameplay. I feel some games would have benefited from being made to go alone or having just one or two people in a group. I think, yeah, so maybe Anne's suggesting and maybe I'm wrong, and that part of the rules are you have to work alone or you can't. I don't know how you police that, but
Yeah, that's the
um,
problem is I don't know how you enforce it.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
Maybe
it's
you have to all go into a separate room and
Yeah,
then
I
you all
guess
come
that
back
would
out
be
the
it.
room or
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah, but these apparently, these games are partially social, and part
Yeah.
of it is figuring out how someone can break the game.
Hmm. Yeah. Uh,
So
yeah. It's up to the players how they want to. But I understand the frustration with sometimes everyone just ganging up on one person or
right.
Anne also says, as a total aside, as I write this, 28th of May, Bex is a contestant on today's BBC One The Finish Line. So The Finish Line is a quiz show, a trivia show on BBC One. So hey, Bex is Sometimes you see these people who appear on different quiz shows, they do the rounds. So Bex is obviously just, she wants to be on TV, she wants to win some cash, she's applying to different shows. Again, she's quite a good TV character. She's sort of quite bubbly and fun. And so I don't know how well she did on the finish line. Haven't watched the episode, but hey, maybe Bex is just sort of one of these. She does the circuit.
Well, we know she didn't reach the finish line on this.
Yes, she did not.
Uh,
Almost,
it,
but not quite.
yeah, it is interesting because I would have assumed that there's some sort of non-compete agreement. Like you can't go on the show. It's literally still airing. It's not even a matter that,
Yeah.
I mean, I know it recorded a while ago, but it's literally still on the air and you're on a different network on one of their shows.
Yeah, it's interesting. Again, like maybe like we've theorized before on the podcast that we think Genius Game was actually supposed to air long before it did, and it
Hmm.
probably got pushed back because they reckoned it wasn't coming across all that well.
Yeah.
So there we go. Bex is we may who knows what show Bex may appear on Big Brother next, or Bex may appear on The Traitors next season. Who knows? Uh, one final thing from a listener. We actually have a voice memo. We have a voice note from a listener. Let's take a listen to that.
I have greatly, greatly enjoyed your regular Genius Game updates. I think Genius Game is brilliant, and I think your podcast take on it is also brilliant. What I've loved most about it, whilst the games are complex and require a lot of thought and attention to make sense of them when you're watching it, I think it is an absolutely incredible reality show. And I think watching the reactions and takes of some of the people playing the game are what has meant that I've totally loved it. I think Benjamin is a brilliant reality character, and I feel like I may have cursed his fortunes when I say Benjamin for the win.
Hey, high praise from Nick for a genius game in the podcast. And full disclosure, I
I,
actually do know Nick. Nick works in TVs, a producer, has a lot of experience on a lot of great shows over the years. So it was lovely to. I didn't know Nick was listening to the pod, so hi Nick, and thanks for that. But yes,
yes,
high
I
praise
agree
for
with
the.
him. I agree with him completely. We are great. I agree with him on that. He is so right.
He's so right, and Nick, you did curse Ben. You gave him the curse. He almost got there, but it's funny. So Nick thinks that Ben was a great sort of reality TV character, and I would agree actually.
Yes.
Ben, at times in the podcast I've sort of made fun of Ben for things here and there, but actually made great viewing for me. I really enjoyed
Hmm.
watching him. He emotes so much that it's for such a cerebral game like we've said that could just be a bunch of really smart quiet people quietly thinking of things. Ben is he gestures and he can tell what he's thinking and feeling, so that makes him come across really well, and he has got funny lines and so on.
Yes. Yes.
uh I guess it made me think about casting in general. We've already talked about it on this episode. Are there any other we're almost at the end of the season now. I mean, what do you have, apart from our thoughts on maybe Bex shouldn't have been on the show, maybe Bedalia shouldn't have been on the show? Do you have any other thoughts, David, just on the casting in general? Like, do you think it worked in this season? Are you disappointed?
I I mean it's really difficult because Bex and Bodalia just took such central roles, and I think they really did negatively impact the
Hmm.
season.
Okay.
Um, and I think you know it's hard to say with Paul because maybe Paul was a dud too, maybe not. He was only there one episode.
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
Bodalia had only been there one episode, if Bex had only been there one episode, okay, nobody would have been saying much about
Hmm.
it. But then to lose Scott and to
Yeah.
lose
Yeah.
Amanfi
Yeah.
and to keep Bex and Bodalia around, oh, it's just so frustrating at that point. And it just kept getting worse and worse.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think casting screwed up. I think they tried to do your typical reality game. Oh, we'll get a few people who really know the game and a few who don't, and we'll see how they interact. That is not the way you do this show.
Yeah.
Is not the goal here. And so I think that was their biggest screw up. And it is especially bad, I think, when it comes to UK TV, because it's the same thing we saw in UK Survivor, where you had some people playing hard and some people complaining about those who were playing hard. And we've talked about this before. There is this mentality in UK viewers that unless you're in a mansion or a castle, you have to play with honor and honesty and all these things. And I think it hurts when you have someone calling out dishonest behavior and saying, "Oh, I would never do that," rather than everyone being on board with it.
Yeah.
I think if everyone's on board, it's easier for the viewer to say, "Oh, that's what this show is about."
Yeah. I agree. And, obviously the people making the show they can't predict. They don't know how people are going to get eliminated, so they don't know that like Scott is going to go out in episode 2.
Right.
But yeah, then that means they have to plan for that, and so they shouldn't want to end up with the people who make it to the semi-final who actually aren't great at these games and actually can't even understand the games.
What if
Yeah,
Bedalia had actually rolled a 2?
yeah, and could have been in the final.
I
Uh,
mean, boy, that would have been, you have Ken versus Bedalia in the final 2.
Yeah, it just kind of
Oh,
makes it a bit laughable that this is called Genius Game, and you've got one actual genius and one guy
right.
who doesn't know how he got here. But yeah, it's I think what I keep meaning to say about Bex is again she admits like I'm not a brainiac. Her words.
Hmm.
I think they cast her because I think way back at the start we see that she's like a business owner, so that's her sort of storyline is. She maybe dropped out of school. I think she didn't really leave school with lots of qualifications. She didn't go to university, but she's carved a whole business for herself. She's like an entrepreneur, and that's how she's made her life, and that's really impressive. Like that's incredible, and she obviously is very successful. In what she does, and so I guess they cast her because they thought, well, try and show like different ideas of what a genius could be, and that's fine, but not for this show.
No.
If that like that's fine if some of the tasks are like The Apprentice and it's like we're going to give you a
Right.
marketing task this week. But none of Bex's skills, and I'm sure she has loads of skills in business, they don't apply to any of these games. So it was just pointless.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
It was just, yeah, it was, the casting was terrible. I'm
yeah,
just going to say,
I
as
know.
as a whole, some of the cast are great,
Yeah.
but when you look at the casting as a unit, it was not good.
Yeah, and even
Um,
I think like Alison, I think probably was really she was great in death matches. She
right.
had a great memory, so she's a writer of crime. You have to be, you have to think on lots of different
Right.
layers to plot out a really successful crime story. You need to weave different storylines together and have
Hmm.
clues and have red herrings and all that stuff. So she's obviously very clever as well, but I don't think Alison was a great TV character. She was very, very quiet.
Right.
There wasn't much to get from her on screen. And again, I think they just thought, oh, we'll have people from a variety of backgrounds,
Yeah.
so we'll have the crime writer, but she's just sort of a quiet, nice lady that didn't get to do very much.
Right.
So even even Alison's presence sort of was a bit of a dud. And that's not, I'm not, complete, I'm not criticizing Alison as a person.
Yeah.
I'm sure she's very lovely and very clever. Just don't know if she was a great reality TV character.
Yeah. And that, again, yeah, so much of these shows come down to casting. I do think, I mean, it sounds like we're wrapping up the series already, but just to, it wasn't all casting. I do think that the early shows could have been made better by having a better choice of games at the beginning.
Mhm.
Obviously, by having David Tennant interact with them
Yeah.
instead of, the dealers, whose job it was to be emotionless, essentially. Uh, I think they tried to copy the format too much and not adjust it for the UK audience.
Yeah, I agree. And actually, that was sort of my one final thought for this
Mhm.
episode. Before we, well, kind of wrap up, listeners. I have a couple of very important things to tell you about. But yeah, my final thought was, I know we've said it before, and we
Yeah.
we talked about it a lot in episode one. It really occurred to me in this episode, like it sort of just became even more glaring to me how much it fails because of David Tennant not being there. So just sort of watching him say, "Congratulations, you've made the final." I thought, yeah, really, David Tennant. It was all so scripted out and mapped out meticulously in advance. He probably came
Hmm.
in for, I don't know, 3, 4, 5, 6 days, recorded all these bits, and it just, I don't know why, but
I think it
something
was
about
less than that. I think it was 2 days.
it,
I think he did
yeah,
all
it
the
could have
pre
been.
stuff and then the post.
Yeah. So it just struck me again in this episode, like, man, it just highlights a missed opportunity. There's no chance for interactivity. Like he can't
Right.
reference funny things that have happened in the games.
Yeah.
He can't reference like noteworthy things that have happened in the series, and so it's kind of just like playing a video game that doesn't really have any idea who you are,
Yes.
and everybody who plays
That's
it's going to
yeah.
have the exact same script.
Yeah, that's a very good comparison. A video game, where you're going to get the same thing no
Yeah.
matter what you do. Um, as opposed to like, yeah, he could have interacted and been like, great job there, Bex,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I mean, I know he probably wouldn't have said negative, truly negative things, but watching like even watching something as basic as Family Feud
Hmm.
or uh I'm trying to think of Jeopardy,
Yeah, or
anything like
Millionaire or
that.
something.
Yeah, the host can do something when someone says something utterly ridiculous. They can interact with them and be like, yeah, okay, that one's going to be there, sure.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, there's no interaction there.
Yeah.
Um,
I wonder if
so
Steve Harvey presented Genius Game, what would that look like?
very different, very, very different.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, as far as my final thoughts on this episode, I'm very happy with the final two.
Yeah.
I also would have
Yeah.
been very happy if Ben had been there instead of Charlotte, but
Yeah.
hey, Charlotte is my winner pick.
Mhm.
I'm just completely ecstatic that neither Bex nor Bedalia made it. And you know, yeah, that sounds terrible, but we've sounded that way this whole episode, and I'm just being honest, like Bedalia would. You know, I am not bluffing. I truly am glad that neither of those two are there.
Well, I think you're just bitter, David. And I've learned that from Bedalia. Uh,
Yeah,
I agree. Very happy it's
yeah.
Ken and Charlotte finale, but also Ben would have been an absolutely
Hmm.
worthy finalist as well. I have a couple of new things to let listeners in on. I think before I get there, do not turn off. David, tell us where we can find you on social media.
So I am, of course, all over social media and reality TV podcasting. Usually, right now things are mostly quiet on the podcast front, other than, of course, this one. But I'm still posting at least 2 reality TV short videos every day on YouTube, TikTok, and Instagram as at David Bloomberg TV. I'm approaching milestones in both of those. So it's kind of a race to see if I get to 10,000 on TikTok or 50,000 on YouTube. So, you know, anybody who follows me, you're helping me out there. Um, Right now, most of my posts are Survivor, either flashbacks or looks ahead to Survivor 50, or like a combination of both. Plus, of course, as we mentioned, posting some for Genius Game. This one gave me 2 or 3 that I'll be posting, and for the U.S. version of Destination X,
Oh, yes.
which has given me a few to post about.
Mhm.
But you can also find all of my various, in case you forget, you can find all of my various accounts through my link tree at linktree/David Bloomberg, or directly on Blue Sky as at David Bloomberg, where you can also send me comments and questions for our finale episode next week.
Yes. And to make sure you're up to date with the podcast and Traitors, Genius Game, Million Dollar Secret, any shows we end up covering, you can follow on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube at the Trade Hour Podcast. And you can, of course, leave comments and see what everybody else is thinking about the episodes on those platforms. You can email me as well at thetradarpodcast@gmail.com, or you could do what Nick did and leave a voice message. It's your last chance for the finale. Let us hear your thoughts. You can visit memo.fm/thetradarpodcast, and it is like doing a voice note on WhatsApp. It's so simple. You press a button. Uh, and those are all those links, including David's, are in the episode description. As always, if you can subscribe, follow, leave nice reviews, that's fantastic. And I mentioned the coffee.com page from time to time. Thank you again to Angus and Alice, who both donated this past week. And Angus and Alice have donated before at least once. So thank you very much to them. If you wanted to also put in a little donation to help the podcast keep going, it's ko-fi.com/Matthew Keeley. That is also in the episode description. I teased you. I've said, oh, I've got a couple of important things to tell you right at the end. So here we go. First of all, I want to mention two, sort of weirdly, this has happened at the same time, two surveys that you might want to take part in. One is from a Tradar listener, Zach. Zach is carrying out some research for a video game project. It's a really, really quick survey online. I did it today and it took genuinely about 60 seconds, mostly multiple choice. And it's questions that if you're listening to this podcast, you will probably be able to answer. Questions about social deduction games. What shows have you heard of The Traitors? Maybe would you consider playing one on a phone, on a PC? Really quick. So if you'd like to help out your fellow Trader and Traitors fan, Zach, he'd really appreciate it. And the link to his survey is again, it's in the episode description. So if you're watching on YouTube, scroll down a little bit. It's there. If you're listening on Spotify or Castbox or Apple Podcasts, look at the little box that has all the links. It's in there. One other survey is for the Tradar podcast itself. This is from Acast, which is the platform I use to distribute the podcast. Acast has created a survey for the podcast, and every week they send me an email telling me you have had 0 responses to your survey, and that's because I haven't shared it yet. I'll be completely honest, it's quite a long survey. I took a look at it and I didn't even fill it out because it's well, it'd be weird if I was filling out a survey about my own podcast, but there's a lot to it. But I'm sharing it now because it's supposed to be for the good of the podcast. And maybe some people just really like doing surveys and giving their opinions. People love giving their opinions on social media all the time. So this is your chance to do it.
I took a survey asking if people like to do surveys, and it was 100% yes. It's amazing that 100% of the people who responded to that survey like to do surveys.
It's weird that. I'll put it out there that again the link is in the description if you like doing surveys and you want to give it a go. Great. It's basically sort of like what are your interests? What do you like about this podcast? I am almost certain I will have no access to your answers. I will just see the number of people who've replied, so you can be very, very honest. And Acast takes care of it all and somehow improves the podcast, maybe in ratings and stuff like that. Yes, so that would be great if you want to do it, but I am pressuring no one because I don't even know if I would do it. So, a couple of final things. Apart from Genius Game, I'm going to mention a few other shows. Just in the UK, David just mentioned Destination X. There will be a UK version of Destination X as well. It's, I believe, on BBC. It's coming at some point in the next few months. There's been some little teaser trailers. I probably will not be covering it on the podcast, but it's in this sort of world of Traitors, Genius Game, Survivor. So maybe something you want to check out. The Fortune Hotel, which I've referenced a few times.
So on the Destination X, it'll be interesting to see what it's like because I obviously haven't seen the other international versions. But the person I talked about who worked on Genius Game,
yes,
posted on Blue Sky about it and said international I don't remember what version they said. Maybe it was like Belgian version or something like that. Says you show a player that says, "Oh, I heard this person walking by who was whistling a tune that is related to that." It's really convoluted. And then they said, "American version rhymes with Twitzerland." So So
Right now, I want to watch the US one just for the funny little clues like that.
it's not quite that bad, but there were a few of them. Like it literally had a picture of Jennifer Aniston and Eva Longoria,
Hmm.
and you had to put together that it was Gen Eva.
Oh,
You
okay.
were
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
Geneva.
Okay.
And, so it was,
That level.
yeah, yeah.
Okay. I have no idea what I get. There's a little trailer for the UK one. It doesn't give very much away.
Hmm.
Rob Brydon, I think, is hosting it. A lot of people recognize him from Gavin and Stacey in TV shows and comedy. So that's coming on, and Fortune Hotels Series 2 is on the way. I think it just says summer, but I think probably next month, July, it'll be back on ITV. I, again, will most likely not be covering it on the podcast, but I have mentioned it lots of times because it's quite similar to Million Dollar Secret, which we covered.
I'm
Million Dollar
still not
Secret.
convinced. I'm still not convinced you weren't lying about that. So,
I promise it's real. Million Dollar Secret, by the way, is, in my opinion, much better than Fortune Hotel. But they're teasing that there are more devious twists in this new season. I hope so because that would make it better than the first one. But hey, you like The Traitors, you like Genius
mhm.
Game, you're probably gonna kind of like Fortune Hotel. So that's coming out soon. And then something else coming out very soon, and I mentioned it last week, and it's much more sort of relevant to the podcast and us, is The Traitors India. So unless things go drastically wrong, and in fact The Traitors India is not going to be available worldwide on Amazon Prime, which we believe it is, the trader will be covering the show. I've decided to go ahead with it because I'm going to be watching it anyway. May as well podcast about
Might as
it.
well. Yeah.
It begins on June the 12th, and I believe is dropping one episode per week. That's how I understand it. I will keep you updated if that changes. David will be joining me at some point in that season to cover the show. I also have some other guest co-hosts lined up already who are really excited about it, about this new edition of the Traitors franchise. So, Traitors India on the Trader coming very soon. Thank you for listening. We will be back next time very soon after the finale episode airs with our last recap and analysis
Hmm.
podcast episode. Until then, as always, keep us on your radar.
And stay geniusy.